150 years ago, 127 known intelligent species inhabited the cosmos. These beings ranged from the sleek and nimble to the massive and lumbering to the many-limbed and fearsome. Each species, with its own distinct beauty and culture, contributed to the vibrant tapestry of the interstellar society. Now, only 56 species remain above the brink of extinction. Of these, I will tell you about the one we came to dread the most: the Zirani. The Zurani were the final members to join the galactic community before the catastrophe unfolded, concealing much about their nature and history. This wasn't unusual. Many species retracted into themselves when faced with the enormity of the wider universe, often overwhelmed by their newfound smallness. We respected their privacy and didn't pry. Despite being an impressive stellar empire, having evolved in a remote and desolate sector of space, their citizens quickly left their own worlds for the stars of other nations. Within a decade, Zirani were a common sight on every planet, their exceptional adaptability allowing them to coexist with nearly anyone. The galaxy grew fond of these intriguing bipeds. Whether extracting minerals on Scarus, IV managing enterprises on Thrine, or exploring the vibrant caves of Darvelia, the Zirani swiftly became a significant minority across the cosmos. Born explorers, diplomats, and merchants, they found fast friends in every corner of the galaxy. Even warlike species, such as the Norax and Turla, respected the pink-skinned creatures' combat prowess, and their governments soon included Zirani representatives who unseated previous leaders through duels. They were omnipresent, excelling in various roles, yet they remained secretive about their own past. Eagerly studying others' histories, they rarely divulged their own, speaking only of the recent rise of the current Zirani Union, born from a fractured species of numerous smaller factions. Eventually, we stopped inquiring. 48 years after their arrival, a menace emerged. From a region long considered impassable due to dense nebulae and bizarre electromagnetic anomalies, the Kurak appeared. The galaxy had enjoyed over a millennium of peace. Even the militant species had let their armies lapse, envisioning a future without war. Unprepared, our community had not faced conflict in almost 180 years, and when the Kurak invasion began, we were unprepared. Technology had advanced, but militaries were ill-equipped for anything more than skirmishes with rogue pirates. Caught off guard, we organized a genuine blockade after nearly 2 years, by which time the Kurak had conquered 30% of the galactic arm. The Zirani were ubiquitous: combat medics, admirals, ship engineers. They were everywhere. As decades passed, the conflict intensified, and even the sturdiest economies began to falter. The various empires struggled to maintain a formidable defense. After nearly 50 years of warfare, a Zirani diplomat, Janelle Sorrenthis, approached the Galactic Council, proposing that the Zirani take over military command. We had lost nearly half the galaxy. Ancient empires had crumbled and were absorbed by their neighbors to prevent further chaos. Despite many Zirani leading the war effort, we were skeptical. The Zirani had suffered nearly as many casualties as the rest of the combatants combined. We doubted their ability to form an effective fighting force. Though skilled in combat and economically stable due to their distant position from the front lines, they had never engaged in a galaxy-wide war. Debates raged for weeks, but Janelle stood firm, supported by her superiors. Council opinions were split. Some saw opportunists exploiting a crisis, while others saw peacekeepers eager to make a difference. Finally, in exasperation, she declared she wasn't requesting, she was demanding. She demanded the council relinquish leadership to the Zirani, and the Zirani leaders backed her, claiming their people understood war and would follow orders. To use a Zirani idiom, it was the last spark that ignited the powder keg. Other generals and admirals rallied behind their Zirani counterparts, forcing the council's hand. Within a week, a Zirani fleet reclaimed a sector we had struggled to retake for months. They emerged from faster-than-light travel, unleashing nuclear weapons and light-speed missiles with a near-suicidal boldness. The Kurak were annihilated in a storm of fire and carnage. The Zirani employed more firepower in a week than we had in a month, achieving results unseen in years. But they didn't stop. They advanced further into enemy territory, paying a heavy price for every system reclaimed, but making the Kurak pay even more. 3 months later, we officially transferred command to the Zirani. A Zirani admiral declared the galaxy would be ours within a decade. We laughed, but they fulfilled their promise. Under Zirani leadership, more Zirani joined the fight, confident that with their people in charge, victory was inevitable. By then, the Kurak had slaughtered trillions, and each Zirani joining the fight had lost friends, family, or simply wanted to help or annihilate the Kurak. Throughout the conflict, Zirani were everywhere. Vast medical fleets tended to the wounded. Human armadas pursued the enemy relentlessly. We witnessed every honorable deed the Zirani performed. But amid this, the greatest minds among the Zirani debated, and after 50 years of war, they made a chilling decision. In a month, they reclaimed sectors long held by the Kurak, turned the tide in a year, and within 4 years had the Kurak retreating. But how they achieved this froze our blood. Biological monstrosities, the products of deranged experiments, were unleashed on worlds to devastate military bases. Where creatures failed, entire colonies of violent convicts were dropped instead, causing chaos that tore Kurak forces apart. Horrific, viral bombardments left entire worlds writhing in agony, bodies disintegrating into sludgy masses or being destroyed from within. Nanite swarms stripped enemy fleets of their hulls, spacing occupants and using the metal to grow into planet-sized entities capable of consuming entire systems within weeks. When all else failed, the Zirani scorched entire worlds with nuclear fire, turning the glittering gems of the Rahin and Lorath empires into eternal infernos to ensure the Kurak lost their hold. When the inevitable backlash emerged, Admiral Keelan Strife addressed the galactic network, bluntly stating, "Do you want the Kurak defeated, or do you want to die to their guns?" By the 6th year, the galaxy was weary of the atrocities and turned inward, trying to rebuild fractured nations and economies stretched to their limits. With the Kurak's defeat imminent, we abandoned our swords for plows and offered prayers to our Zirani saviors. But each day, the Zirani devised new, horrifying methods of warfare. Accelerating particles to near light speed and slamming them into planets to obliterate them in seconds became a standard tactic. Drone fleets, acting like locusts, dismantled ships, attempting to escape the atmospheres of ruined worlds. Starving worlds relying on food shipments were encased in shields and left to deteriorate as war fleets moved onward. Inhabitants either starved, devolved, or succumbed to cannibalism. The 7th year brought the worst. Nanite swarms grew to encompass stars. Viruses were redesigned for maximum devastation. The Zirani learned new war tactics from other empires, and even the Kurak, deploying them eagerly. Ariana stood as the sacred symbol of the Calorian faith, taken in the first decade of fighting. It was a major Kurak victory. A system of 20 perfectly terraformed planets, a marvel of engineering and artistry. Its loss was a deep blow to the Faith's followers. The Zirani launched a payload into Ariana's sun. Within hours, it went supernova, collapsing into a black hole that consumed the system within a week. This act led to the Zirani's condemnation by the Galactic Council. Previous atrocities had been tolerated, but the ability to collapse stars was too much. Outrage spread across the worlds, with calls to remove them from the War Council. The Zirani leadership responded with a single message: this is war. In war, there is only victory or death, and we will achieve victory. Accompanying the message was a complete history of the Zirani, and we began to understand. Millennia of warfare defined their legacy. Continual conflicts, whether between nations or insurgencies against governments, marked their history. Even before they left their homeworld, they had nearly annihilated it 5 times in pursuit of war. Once they ventured into space, wars spanned decades. Zirani V, Lyros, Core Worlds V, Frontier Colonies, Zol V, Lylos Alpha. It never ceased. In the 800 years, from their first colony to discovering the galactic community, there were no fewer than 963 wars involving Zirani. Wars overlapped. Civil conflicts erupted amidst invasions. War seemed ingrained in their nature, and we unleashed this upon the galaxy. We unleashed a genocidal race to combat another genocidal threat. The Zirani kept their promise. The Kurak were driven back to their corner of the galaxy, and their systems obliterated in one of the worst genocides ever witnessed. We remained silent. What could we say? When the Zirani waged war, it was total. They rose to protect their new comrades, and in doing so, shattered the galaxy. And then, they returned to their ways. Their horrors were locked away or destroyed, their military largely disbanded, and veterans received pensions, either retiring or resuming their old lives. But the galaxy would never forget the terrifying potential of the Zirani if provoked. They never needed to threaten. Their actions spoke volumes. Above all, the Zirani's capacity for war and the consequences of turning against them remained a haunting reminder.